funny bone.
There's their in.
Oh, funny bone. Oh, I'm going home. You know who I saw the other day?
Who?
David Zaharakis.
Did ya?
Yeah.
How is
the
he?
dog.
How's his
Didn't
shoulder
ask.
going? Or whatever it
I
was?
think he's playing this week, potentially.
Nice.
Didn't ask him any of these things, but also didn't ask him to be on the show, but at least I only drove past him. But it was weird because I identified him from behind and he was wearing a hoodie. I thought, that's David Zaharakis. Drove past him. It was David Zaharakis.
Slightly creepy.
Weird, wasn't it?
Very weird. You just recognise those glutes, or?
It was just actually like a real gut reaction of, it's David Zaharakis.
You just know an AFL play when you see the behind of them.
It's like a sixth sense.
It is.
I see rich
Not
people.
one that would help you in any way.
No.
I see AFL players.
And Bruce Willis was an AFL player the whole time. Welcome, viewers, to a very special episode of the Magoos. It is round
18 coming into.
That's usually your role. Tell me
So
what
why is it special?
It's special because we've got the one, the only AFL Hall of Famer, Anthony Koutoufides, on the show.
Cooter.
So this chat is a boyhood dream of mine, and I think Ben is going to enjoy it too. So this episode is purely dedicated to having Anthony Koutoufides on the show. So sit back, Magoo's viewers, relax and enjoy this special chat with two-time Carlton Best and Fairest winner, premiership player, Anthony Koutoufides. Okay, love to welcome to the Magoo's podcast, Anthony Koutoufides. Cooter, thanks for joining us.
Boys, great to be here. Thank you very much
mate.
for the privilege. This is great.
Incredible, isn't it?
I'm a bit nervous.
Started from the bottom, now we're here.
We are, yeah. We definitely are.
I actually don't even know how I got here, boys. How did I end up here? How did I?
Just a fan of the show, I assume.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
Just
Yeah.
saw us and approached us to
You're
join.
right,
I'm sure.
Chlorophyll is a
You're
hell of a drug.
Just woke up in Preston.
Yeah.
Obviously not.
Okay, so thanks very much for your time this afternoon. We're going to go through your journey from right from the start to how you
worries.
ended up here in Preston.
Yeah, well, this is a long story now. Yeah.
So just take us back to your early footy days. Where did you play? How were you introduced to footy? Where did it all begin?
All began really at primary school, at Laylaw East Primary, down the road from where Mum and Dad raised us. And, I don't know, we fell in love with the Australian rules, the game of, football. We got introduced to it. I didn't know what it was. Of course, it was foreign, but then again, it's a huge game here in Australia. And our friend invited us down to a local footy club. It was East Thomastown, black and white. Hence the reason why I barracked for him as a young kid, which is a mistake, right? And we all know that now. But, from there, Mum and Dad didn't want us to play, but we actually fought them. It was my older brother and myself. He was 13 months older, Paul. And, I don't know, first year I really did not know much about the game. By the second year I started to play, a lot better. In grade 4, I got invited to the grade 5 and 6 footy team. So the teacher asked me, I said no, and then asked my brother. My brother was like, please play. So I played at full forward and I was kicking all these goals. And I just fell in love with that game, and that's where I first started. Then a few of our friends went to the Laylaw Football Club, which was renowned as the better football club back then. And they came over to Mum and Dad's house and said, your kids, we want them to come to Laylaw. And we're just like, okay, let's go to Laylaw. That was the best decision we could have made. It was just an incredible football club. It was a loving environment. A lot of Europeans and Australians, and we were like one big family. And a lot of success came out of the Laylaw Football Club, and a lot of incredibly great players, where the senior players then went on to win, I think, 4 premierships throughout the 90s, and now it's not doing too well, the club. But a lot of great junior footballers, and I had a great time there at Laylaw, and that's how my footy sort of started.
That's great. Cool. Now, Kuda, if I am honest, I was a little hesitant to have you on the show. Being a podcast called The Magoos, we do pride ourselves on being the reserves, if you will.
That's all right, I've got a story about that, but go on.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say, I wouldn't be surprised if you haven't played reserves since you're probably 12. Yeah. But like for example, last week we had on the show a guy that James Hird hugged one time in 2004.
Yeah.
You fast forward 7 whole days, basically, and we've got Anthony Koutoufides on the show now. But after doing some research, we did come across that when you were, under 18s, you were playing in the reserves. Played 50 games, and then you won the BNF in 91, was it, I think?
The boys have done the research very well.
Yeah, I actually want to know, what was that sort of the reserves part of the football club like?
Yeah, so I got invited on the list when I was 17. So basically, at the end of 1990, so 91, I was on the list, but I didn't play a senior game. I played a pre-season game against Essendon, And I think we were just ahead. It was about 2 or 3 minutes to go, and I had the ball. And Braddles was calling for it. And, of course, you know, like when Braddles calls, you're going to kick him the ball. But I was a little bit off balance, so I kicked and went out in a full. So your mob, Essendon, got the ball, went boom, boom, kicked the goal. They bounced the ball and kicked another goal. And Parker went off his head. It was only a pre-season game. And I reckon from that point onwards, he probably didn't see me as maybe a player he wanted to play for the rest of the year. So
17.
yeah, well, I was 18. I just turned 18. Yeah, so I was 17. I was on the list basically. I got onto the list, and then by 19, I was playing senior footy. But I played 50 reserve games, which was a very difficult period for me. There was a lot of ups and downs, and so people look at my career and go, you know, whatever, 278 games and a couple of best and fairest and so on, but don't realise the amount of hard work I put in to cement myself as a senior player. And 91, I didn't get a game. 92, I played 6 games. 93, 8 games. 94, I played the first half and got dropped for 2 games. And then I came back and they played me on the wing. And from that point onwards, I never looked back. I think I was in the best players almost every week. But in 1992, I was playing a fullback for the reserves. So that's where I won my best and fairest from fullback back then. And I guess because I was quite athletic. And over that pre-season, I put on about 8 kilos of muscle that I all of a sudden had this strength and speed and power, and I was able to beat majority of the players that I played on. But if I can turn back the clock a little bit, at the age of 14 was when I got the letter from the Carlton Football Club. So I played 2 years in their development squad back then, right? They don't have it anymore. I made the Victorian team, which I was more like an emergency and bench player. Then from there, they invited me to the Carlton under-19, so I had to leave my beloved Ladle Football Club and play at the under-19s, where I played about 36 or 38 games in the 2 years that I was there, and made the Till Cup team, Vic Metro, made the All-Australian team and centre-half back also. So even at a young age, I was could play in all these different various positions on the ground.
So talking about, you know, how you sort of had to go the hard way through it, and, you know, you had 3 or 4 seasons when you were in and out of the side. These days we see, you know, first round draft picks and these highly touted kids come in and just get given opportunity straight away. How frustrating for you was, you know, being in the twos and playing 3 or 4 seasons in and out? Do you feel like that was more of a frustration, or was it, you know, looking back on it now, was it crucial to your development, or do you feel like you would have still been able to have a big impact at AFL level if you had gone in and then had that continuity through your footy?
I think it was both. No doubt, I think it made me a better player, but it was frustrating and hard to accept too at the time. It was very difficult for me at times. I was very emotional. It was like a roller coaster almost. I remember one game, and nothing against David Parker, and I love him, but you know, one game I started on the bench, and it was against North Melbourne, and Andrew McKay came off with the blood rule, so I had to replace him. I literally ran on for a minute, and the runner came out to me and said, "Kouta, Parker wants to know if you want to play today." And this is in a senior game, senior footy, young kid. I hadn't played many games before that, and I almost wanted to cry on the field. And a minute later, I was off. You know, when McKay was ready, I was off onto the bench and didn't play for the rest of the game. So you can imagine emotionally what it was like. I was lucky I had great family support from my parents and my 2 brothers. And I think there was times I probably didn't even try in the reserves because I thought I haven't even got a hope here of making it, because what else do I need to do to prove to these guys that I can actually play football? So it's very frustrating, but I look at my career and there's probably certain parts where I think, you know, maybe I could have done better there, or maybe if this didn't happen, if I didn't get injured. But at the end of the day, I give myself, you know, a big tick for the fact that I didn't give up and I continued to pursue my dream as a young kid. I played AFL footy, but I wanted to make sure that I fulfilled all of my ability to go out there and try to do, you know, and play as many games as I possibly can. So I'm not sure how I got through that period. In hindsight now, you look back and don't think much of it, but I know going through it, it was difficult. In particular, when people were going, "Kouta, what's wrong? Are you going to play? Oh, geez, all this talent." But I think that's where coaches have to become like managers almost, and they have to understand the individual player. And some players can get, you know, hit and smashed or whatever, and they get up and they keep going. Others need a pat on the back. And I think I was one of those guys that, you know, I've got belief in you, just keep going and don't worry. And then I would fulfill, you know, my capabilities. But when it was that sort of way, it was very difficult for me. So in hindsight, I probably, you know, if it was the way I wanted it to be, I probably would have played a lot more senior footy and a lot less reserves. But that's the way it was back then. If they had to choose between an experienced player or younger player, they'd pick the experienced player. And it was really hard also in 1993 when I was emergency for the reserves, for the seniors when they played against Essendon, and the reserves finals, pretty much all the finals that I played in the reserves and whatever, I was always in the best, but I still never got that opportunity. So I don't know, maybe the coaches and that didn't like me or didn't understand me or whatever it was before I finally had to show them and prove what sort of a player I was. So it was a very slow start to my career, I should say, yeah.
I feel like AFL coaches now are more teachers and role models and
a whole team around them now, don't they?
Well, that's true, but more emotionally intelligent, those sort of things,
100%.
which is great.
100%.
At still younger years, you were quite the athlete growing up as a kid. Under 16s, you were national high jump champion. Yeah, also did hurdles and discus and a few other things. Around the same time, I was told by my coach that I turned around like a Mack truck, so I wasn't quite that athletic. But do you feel like that carried over to your football, being athletic and like doing athletics and doing those things? And you did have the chance, I think, to go to the Olympics at one stage.
That I'll never know. No, I'll never know. But yeah, you're right. I had an incredible junior athletics career. By the time I was in grade 5, I was the state high jump champ with not really too much training, So I had, I guess, this natural ability. When I look back, not that I ever knew anything different growing up. And at the age of 14, I finally got some proper coaching. I became an Australian champion high jumper, under 15s, under 16s, and I won so many multi-events, which is like decathlon.
Yeah.
And then towards the latter part of my athletic career, I started hurdling too, because it's part of the decathlon. And where I was when I got coached at Olympic Park, I started doing hurdles a little bit more. My brother was state champion for the 110 hurdles, so I had someone to compete against. And we were very competitive against each other. And so I started the hurdles, and before I realised that I was state, champion, I'm like, God, this is going all right. At the age of 16, my high jump coach invited someone down from the country. His name was Tim Forsyth. Tim went on to represent Australia at the 1996 Atlanta Olympic Games, jumping 234, I think, and winning a bronze medal. But that's when I lost my championship to Tim. He jumped 216 when I jumped 208, so he was way too good for me in the high jump. But at that championship there in Adelaide, which was one of the last times I competed, I won the Australian 110-metre hurdles title with an Australian record, which I held for many, many years. But I think someone wrote a letter many years later to tell me that he did, beat me and beat my record. I just ripped it up. I tore it up. Said, mate, I don't want to know about this. So I had an opportunity. Kyle Vanderkuyt made the Olympics, and he was 2 years older than myself, so my times compared to him were a little bit quicker. But he was a phenomenal hurdler and went on to the Olympic final back in 1996, finishing 7th. I competed against Jai Tarima, who won a silver medal in the long jump at the year 2000 Sydney Olympics. So we competed in the hurdles and the decathlon, and so I always beat him in those events and that also. So I never know if I could have made the Olympics. Maybe I could have. I really loved athletics. In some ways, when I look back, I probably had that little bit more love for athletics, but felt like I maybe had more of a chance in football than athletics, because I just, all the drug tests and, my idols like Carl. I love Carl Lewis, and then that race in 1988 Seoul Olympics when Ben Johnson beat Carl Lewis. That was the greatest sporting event of my life, to watch that. And then the next day, Ben Johnson, get caught on drugs. But you're sus about all of them, you know what I mean? And I didn't want to go down that path and that team aspect, living at home with mum and dad to be able to represent the Carlton Football Club. I think back in 1990 when they offered me the contract was the reason why I chose football.
Awesome.
Cool. We'll jump to a really happy time for all Carlton people out there, and I'm sure for you as well, 1995. Yeah. From a team perspective, it was dominant. 20-2 and, just some of the great football. I was obviously pretty young, but I've watched all the video highlights of that year, I reckon 15,000 times, more relevant now than ever during a struggling period. But so in the year you gained your first All-Australian selection in a premiership year. Just talk us through how good 1995 was from that inner sanctum.
It's unbelievable. Everything came to fruition for me at the second half of 94 when things started to fall in place with me. But then we were on top of the ladder with the game to go in 1994, and then we lost to his mob, Essendon. Greg Williams didn't play that game, and then we finished second on the ladder. And the finals back then were first play 8th, second play 7th. You probably don't remember, but we finished second. We played Melbourne, who was 7th, and they beat us. Then we came up against Geelong, who had 4 or 5 of their gun players missing. So we heard about it before the game. We're thinking, we've got this one, and we got absolutely annihilated by Geelong by 10 goals or whatever. So in 1995 started, all the media was saying that we were too old and too slow. And we had some incredibly, AFL genuine superstar players in our team that were starting to age. So we're really, the window of opportunity was really starting to diminish. 93 lost the grand final. 94 get into the finals on second on ladder and were straight sets out. And then I think that pre-season, I don't even think we won a game, but I went to see a sports psychologist in 94. His name was Anthony Stewart, and he did a great thing for me to, turn my football and life around. So the club employed him the next year in 95, and he went to Parker. You've got some, so many incredible leaders here. Why don't you hand over a little bit of the reign to the players? We came up with our game plan, which is very similar to Parko's anyway. I don't know if that made a difference. So pre-season, we didn't win a game, and then come season, we only lost 2 for the entire year to the 2 bottom teams. And so, it's incredible, isn't it? Like, when I look back to it, I think, I don't know how we lost them, but we did.
Like, comfortable losses too.
Yeah,
I think they were like 8-9 goal losses to 2 of the worst sides in the comp when you're having one of the most dominant seasons of all time. Yeah,
so it was a real weird one. So after those 2 losses, we all went into the into a room there in Parko, and everyone was furious because we're thinking, last year we lost straight sets. This is all falling apart now. But from that point onwards, we never looked back. We all had to pick our own footy teams, and Parko must have went through them and said, okay, who are the team players here? Who do the players want to play with? I'm not sure. Then that week, I think we went out and played Hawthorn and thrashed them by 99 points or whatever. Never looked back. We had a couple of close games, don't get me wrong, but even at halftime when we were losing, we still felt like we were just going to go out there and win. And I don't know if you remember, but the first final against Brisbane, you won't remember, right?
I don't.
No. Do you remember that? It was the qualifying final.
Seen it 1,000 times, I'm sure.
Well, we were the favourites that day, but at 3/4 time, I think Brisbane were ahead of us.
Yeah.
And Chris Scott was tagging me, the current day Geelong coach, and I hadn't had really a kick. So Parko put me in the full forward, and Sticks Kernahan kicked the first one, then I kicked the next 3. So it sort of blew Brisbane away, and then we only won by 13 points. So even that game there, if we had have lost, who knows what would have happened. Then we had the week off, and then we come up against North Melbourne. We thrashed them by 11 goals. And then Geelong in the grand final, you would have seen it at the start of the game. Matty Hogg copped an elbow, and he couldn't talk after the game, and Dean Rice got smashed down, and they just went hard, Geelong. Probably not at the ball enough, and we just went hard at the ball and physically and did all the 1%ers that meant, that was the reason why we won the game. And it was instigated, I reckon, by Peter Dean, who I thought if we had to really choose a player that really played heart and team and did everything he had to do to be best on ground, I would say Peter Dean would have been. Although Greg Williams deserved the Norm Smith, there's no doubt about it. But still to this point, that day there, I'll have to say, because, I'm married and 3 kids, but to be honest, and as a young kid, I was not sure if I dreamt about a wife and kids, maybe. But my dream was to play AFL footy. So that grand final and that premiership was still, to this day, the greatest day of my life. I'd never give away my kids for it. No, don't get me wrong. But it was just the most incredible feeling of thinking all the heartache and pain, the blood, sweat and tears that I went through to get to the stage of being at the MCG in front of 90-odd thousand people. And when the siren went, I couldn't believe I was about to be a premiership player for the Carlton Football Club. It was the 16th one. I thought I was going to win another 2 or 3 by the time I retired, because that was what was happening previously. Everyone was like, man, Jack Elliott, when we came into the club rooms when I first started, it was like, you get remembered here if you win premierships. If you don't, this is the Carlton Football Club, you won't be remembered. So we're all about premierships, and that's how the culture was back then. So unfortunately, from then, we played off in 99, but we weren't quite ready and had the opportunity in 2000 and 2001, barring injuries to some of our key players. But I never had that opportunity again. But we partied hard after 95, and it was worth every single day of those 6 weeks that we partied hard.
Not down at Kramer's in Preston?
No, we avoided, even then, we avoided Kramer's.
So you just touched on 99, 2000, 2001. They're sort of widely recognised as your dominant years from a personal point of view. I mean, you donned the big V, you won the AFL MVP, you got your second All-Australian, your first Carlton Best and Fairest. How do you think that you took your game to that next level? Obviously, as you said, you'd worked your way into the side as a senior player in 94, 95, but then you really just took over. Was that your prime? Like, what else were you doing to get yourself to the level of pretty much being, the most dominant player in the competition on any given day?
I had 3 great years of 94, 95 and 96. I guess the expectations of me, because at my best, there were, there was not many, I guess, that could play. And if I wasn't up there, then the game was never good enough. And in 97, I hadn't like an okay year, but not great. But then I lost my father in 98, and that destroyed me. That affected me mentally. And all I was caring about was going out with the boys and just drinking and didn't really care about footy. I almost felt like giving up, on footy because I lost my father. And it was just a pathetic excuse, but that was the feeling how I had. I was still living at home, loved my father, still to this day. It was 20 years ago when it happened. And it was really hard for me to accept the fact that he wasn't there with me anymore. I used to drive mum and dad to the games, as embarrassing as it was. And then, in 98, he's not there anymore. So I didn't have a great pre-season that year. Every time I was at training, all I could think about was my father and wanting to go home and spend time with him. So by the middle of that 98 year, we played it against Fremantle in WA, and I had about 5 touches for the game, and that was the sort of bottom, I reckon, of me. And by the time I flew home, my 2 greatest mentors, Barry Mitchell and Wayne Britton, were the ones who sat me down in the office and said, "Coot, it's up to you now what you want to do, if you want to continue playing or not. You're not fit enough. And we know what's happened with your father. We'll support you, but you've got to make that decision." So
you did have the word. They did actually.
Yeah, they said,
that crossroads moment.
Yeah, 100%. And Mike Sheen had an article in the back page that said, "Drop Cooter," which was fair enough. I don't have an issue with it because the way I was playing. But luckily I had the club support, and they started playing me a centre-half back. And when I went home that night, I remember promising my father, I said, "Dad, I'm going to promise you I'm going to train harder than I ever did before." And I guess when I promised to him, I didn't want to look like a liar as he looked down upon me. So I went out there and trained harder than I ever did before. By the end of 98, I had some really good, consistent, footy, and we just missed the final. So we only won one of the first 10, and Wayne Britton basically then took over the role as the coach of the Carlton Football Club, which not many people would know. And although Parker was the head coach. And then 99, 2000, 2001, it was because I was so fit back then I could just do whatever I wanted to do. And I had a great coach in Wayne Britton that understood how I could play and the importance to me in the team, and basically revolved the game plan, not around me, but just involved me a lot more.
It was around, yeah.
Yeah, it was around. Anyway, he involved me a lot more than what Parko, would have in the past, and Barry Mitchell there, by my side. So for those reasons there, I'd start some of the games as centre-half back, and they'd put me in the midfield, and, I'd end up with 30-something possessions and have all these marks, and eventually they said, "You know what, we just got to play him in the middle," and that's what happened. So in 99, I was surprised I didn't make, without pumping my own tyres up, but the All-Australian team, because I pretty much beat everyone except for probably Matty Richardson, to me, who was always my hardest opponent, and I could never beat him because athletically he was better than me. And other players might have played him differently, but because I was so athletically, I played this way, but he played that way, and his endurance was so far beyond mine that I couldn't keep up with him. So I was surprised, but I went on to win the second best and fairest, I think, at Carlton, which I missed the last 5 games of the season too, so potentially could have won another best and fairest, which all looks good, in the resume. And 2000 being favourite for the Brownlow, that would have been nice too, to have won that, because that increases the resume, but it didn't happen. And Woden won it that year, and I won the most valuable player of the year, voted by my peers, which is really important anyway.
Exactly, yeah.
So it was a harrowing moment, I remember, for a young 9-year-old Carlton supporter when you went down with your knee injury. It's sort of one of my lasting early football memories, which is probably not overly endearing to you, but I just remember that day, and that was sort of one of the moments. Obviously being a young kid, and Carlton have always been really good, and you always enjoy going to the footy, and then you see your favourite player as a kid, go down and experience this injury, and then Dad telling you, well, he's going to not play next season, all that sort of stuff. Yeah. How difficult is that? And I mean, it's changed a little bit these days with all the things that all that rehab stuff that they've got in place. But how difficult was it in the early 2000s to have to miss such an extended run of football? And then I guess, for your Nick Nat News of the world who's about to go through their second ACL, what would you say to those sort of guys having been through those knee troubles of your own?
It was really tough for me because I was at the peak of my powers, really. In 99, I hurt, but it was my left knee, which I missed 5 weeks. I played on Buckley that day and had 30-something possessions, but I don't know, it swelled up, missed 5, but I came back at least for the finals and got to the grand final in 99. But yeah, year 2000, I was in just great form, and round 20 we came up against Essendon, who were unbeaten at that stage, and we'd won 13 in a row, and I think that last week we just lost to the Bulldogs, and the Bulldogs ended up beating Essendon in round 21. Or whatever, and that was a big game. But yeah, for whatever reason, the massive build-up, over 90,000 people in a normal home and away game. Number one on the ladder, and first and second on the ladder. And yeah, just Jason Johnson came around me. So that was the start of it. That should have only been really a 4 to 6 week injury. It took me 9 months to get back. I just had swelling and swelling after swelling, and no one really knew what was going on. So I had an arthroscope, but it just kept swelling, and so eventually I had to rest it for a few months on the couch, having my leg up. So really, it really affected my pre-season. So year 2000, there was the Olympic Games, so we finished the season early, and the next season started later. So it worked out perfectly where I came back for round one. So 2001, I believe, was almost equally as good as 2000, although I probably didn't take as many contested marks as 2000, but still, and probably not as consistent, but still a great year for me, although I didn't get picked in the All-Australian team. But by, I think, the last 3 games of the home and away series, I was best on ground, and we led into the finals. And we came up against Adelaide in the first final, and I had 36 possessions, and I was doing all these sort of things, and we thrashed Adelaide. And even the commentators were saying no one's safe, against Carlton. And then the next week we came up against Richmond, and it was just one of those. As one of those scrappy games where they just tried to scrap, and didn't let the flow of the game happen. It was one of those days in the third quarter. I just went to kick the ball off the ground, and I think the first one I sort of missed, and the second one I tried to get it, and then Matty Knights came across my knee, so my foot got stuck in the pack there, and Adrian Hickmon just pushed him a little bit more, and then all I did, I just felt this pain in my knee, just went snap. I felt like a lacquer band, the thick band, and I've gone, oh no, it was the most excruciating pain for a minute that I've ever felt. I didn't know what to do, and then the pain disappears. But once I went in the change room, I could see my leg was just going like this. So it was almost like a crash, like a car crash accident, not just your normal one where you just twist and turn, it snaps. They're not too bad, but this one, my medial was gone, and everything inside there was a bad one, and so. Unfortunately for me, I had to miss a whole year. But the boys, we had about 6 of our top key 10 players missing in 02, and people always go, oh, Wayne Britton, he couldn't coach. Well, no one could get through a season with that many players. In particular, when you had someone like me, my form, it's like taking, well, you wouldn't say Dustin Martin out of Richmond because there's other players, but like a Lance Franklin too. It's going to make a big difference. And then you take another 4 or 5 of your key players out, and and it wouldn't be easy, and it wasn't easy for Brit. So because the club were down the bottom, they asked me to play, and I played with a brace. The first game was all right, but the third game we played against Sydney, where it was dewy conditions, and I felt like my knee was just, it wasn't quite right. But I went to spoil the ball and slipped over, and Jason Sanderson just went whack straight on my knee, and I knew, and I just basically walked off, so I snapped my medial in that game as well. And so then. Yeah, but when you can miss 1 or 2, but when you're missing 3 years, 4 years sort of in a row with your knee injury, it does have an impact because the game goes ahead and you tend to go that little bit down. And so it made it really difficult in the peak of my powers because of, the injuries that I just copped. But some people get through it like unscathed and never get injured, and some just get it for whatever reason. So I copped it.
Wow. That's
still hurts. Just as you touched on there, obviously that transition period from 2001, and then the first time in Carlton's history, you've gone from being at the most successful club during a really successful era to what was then the worst time in the Carlton Football Club's history. I mean, during 2002, 2003, those years where Carlton had never been down the bottom, then all of a sudden, all these players had left, and then there was all this pressure on the coaching staff and all this sort of stuff. How did as a senior player at the time, as you said, just moving through sort of the peak of your powers, you've gone from a club at the very top to right down the bottom in the depths of despair. And I mean, I would assume that there was no shortage of people lining up wanting to whack Carlton on the way down for the years and years of dominance. How, as a senior player, did that make you feel? And then, how did you possibly try and get through that time? Was there ever a chance or a thought of leaving Carlton during those depths of despair?
If there was ever a time I would have left Carlton, it would have been through that period. It was really hard. 1996, I got this huge offer from Port Adelaide. I'd never seen money like that, but I was never going to leave because I loved the club. But that last 5 years was the most difficult period of my football career. I sometimes don't like to look back on it, because I love the club, and we stood for a lot, and we had great culture, but it just changed overnight. That's why I always say John Elliott's the greatest president ever at that football club, because he made it a family home environment, and he made you feel welcome, and he protected all the players. And there's a difference when you go around saying we've got Z grade players instead of going, mate, our players are the best, we've got the best leaders and all that. There's a difference. So the new board came in and they didn't really talk to us. They had a new coach that, the game plan was very, old-fashioned, and it made it a very difficult period. I reckon we could have had the best players in the competition and still would have finished down the bottom, in my opinion. While the game was advancing over there, we were down. I felt like I was back to when I first started my footy, doing that, just longer running, 3, 5, 6 kilometre runs when the other guys are doing more the sprint power stuff. We were still doing the old-fashioned training. So for me, after so many years of having knee injuries, I needed to work on my strength and power more so than that one-speed running of endurance. There's a major difference. And so I know how to train myself, but I was really, handcuffed by the club and the coaching staff and all that. But it was really difficult for me to accept the fact, to lose a lot of my, good teammates. Some retired, some went in the other place, and the rumour was, the coach wasn't hard enough before. Now we've got a hard coach. That's all crap. All coaches were hard. Don't worry about that. Even Wayne Britton was hard, but fair. There's a difference. But when you have a game plan that you love, you go out there and you play for it. Everyone will lift and play their best footy. When there's a game plan that's really hard and the culture's not good and the environment's not good, no matter what you do, you won't get the best out of the players. And that's what the club was like back then. So I was distraught because, towards the end of my career, I don't care about playing games. I cared about playing finals. Yeah. I cared about the football club and wanted to see the football club back to where it was. I wanted these young players to experience the Carlton Football Club like the way that I experienced the Carlton Football Club when I walked through those doors with these most incredible leadership there from players and above. We were like, I knew all the staff. Ange and I were friends now. We were friends with everyone, and it just changed overnight. So it was really hard for me to accept. It was probably a period where, I wouldn't say the word depressed, but certainly down in the dumps, because we live our life with footy, and when you're not winning or you don't enjoy the environment and don't look forward to going to work, no matter who you are, your life's not great, you know what I mean? So I look back too, and it was a very stressful period for me in those 5 years of football that I was really handcuffed in what I could do. And it was really a sad time, but I guess it's continued on, and, not many things really, well, a lot has changed, but not really. The culture is not nowhere near like what it used to be of decades of dominance.
Yeah, that's great.
Is that a bit too harsh? Or
no. It's correct as well.
Hopefully you don't have too many viewers. This is
all intense. 4 of them will be loving it.
It'll spike now.
So you're clearly quite passionate about the footy club. Like you really do love Carlton Football Club by the sound of it. Do you see yourself getting back there in any role at all?
Yeah.
In the near future? Or?
No, not at the moment. I can't see any door opening for me. Yeah. At this stage, you have to remember, I walked in when I was 14 as a young kid, and I left when I was 34. I lived my life at that football club. I owe everything to them because the happiest period of my life was throughout the 90s, early 2000s, when we were dominant at the best club, and I loved playing footy with my teammates. I had the best teammates, in particular in 95. When I look back, just some great, funny characters it was back then. We, hit the hard. We hit the drinks hard, but we played hard and just did, you know what I mean? Like we lived our life as young kids, and although we were role models, we still got to enjoy ourselves. But we did it in a smart way. So yes, it's very, very difficult, you know what I mean? Like it is hard, and with the club the way it was, because all I want to do is see the club succeed, and it's not going that way. So I had an opportunity. I did ask to get back and involved with the club at one period, but there was nothing apparently available for me. Right. This was the second year after I retired. So since then, I haven't knocked on their door, and they haven't knocked on mine. Right. But it doesn't matter. Like it affected me early on. Like when the club didn't want me, they were offered to do it for nothing, and they didn't want it. I thought, okay, something's happened here. Yeah. I'm not sure what it was, but all I want to do is from afar. Now I'm a supporter, but I still love the club with a passion. You know what I mean? I don't like to see it in the state that it's in now. It shouldn't be that way. But I can't do anything. What can I do now as a supporter from afar? I can't knock on the door and say, all right, everyone out, I'm coming in here and I'm going to fix it, because I can't.
You could try.
I could try.
You could try doing
and there's no harm in trying. And I think in here, as a young kid from 14 to 34, I seen what the footy club was like in the heyday and the bad days. So I know, like in here, and I think that to me is very valuable information. But for whatever reason, I can't, I'm pretty much stuck, and I can't share it with them in the way that I really should. We should be able to see that football club. But it's out of my hands now. There's nothing I can do, and left to the trust of the people that are in there now.
So there's plenty made of the current day Carlton list and where it's going. And I mean, let's focus, forget the last 3 or 4 years, focus on exactly where they're at now. Stephen Silvani was on Footy Classified the other night, and I'm not sure if you saw the interview, but it was like a really staunch defence of the list that he's built and he's building, and Brendan Bolton, all those sort of things. So looking at it right now with Carlton, in your opinion, do you feel things are on track to get to where they're building? Do you feel like it's, what do you like, what don't you like? What do you think that Carlton need to be doing differently, and are they building the premiership list that they're claiming to?
I'm not sure how I should answer that. I've got to be careful because I might get killed by people. Exclusive, yeah.
Exclusive on the Magoos.
Well, we have to put trust in them if they're telling us they're doing the right thing. It's a year that they've gone backwards where I don't think they should have. But if they feel like they're going in the right way, then they're the experts. I can only judge and have my opinion. And the facts will be in the pudding, I guess, when we see in the next year or two how they go. But at the moment, I don't think I've seen a team, play in this sort of way. I'd have to go back a long way to see it, and they've got some injuries. So only time will tell. I hope they can turn it around. I hope they do.
So that's a big no from Anthony Koutoufides.
You said it, not me. You said it.
Just moving away from Carlton just real quickly. You were selected in both the Greek team of the century and the Italian team of the century. Not sure if you've been asked this before, but which one means a little more to you? Are you 50-50 Greek-Italian, or do you lean a little one side?
It depends where I'm at. You know what I mean? Like if it's at a Greek function, I say I'm Greek, and the Italian one, I say, no, don't worry about the Greek side, I'm Italian, My father was actually born in Egypt, so if there was an Egyptian team of the century, I'd probably be in that one too, I guess. I dare
Captain,
say
coach,
so. Yeah.
Full forward.
Who else would be?
I've got a mix. Yeah. We haven't got enough players, but if you guys can just prove that you've got any sort of anything related to Egypt, we'll get you in the team as well, right? So perfect. Even if you just laid foot on the MCG, that's enough to get you in the team.
John Smith out there. He's got Egyptian in him.
I grew up with the 2 best cultures in the time when a lot of Europeans, came to Australia, and I got called all sorts of names like we all did, but I just was lucky that I grew up in this wonderful country. I thanked my mum not long ago to say thank you. I don't know how you chose Australia, but luckily I grew up here. I took it for granted. But now as you get older, you realise how incredible the country is. And I grew up with the Europeans and the Australians, and because of football, Australian rules football, I reckon that helped us migrate and understand each other's cultures. So to have the Greek and Italian culture, I just thought it was a normal thing for mum to do all the cooking and the washing and all that, and realised later on that the Australians didn't eat as much as what we did, and didn't, I guess, put on a higher priority of the food of dinner time and lunch and all that, whereas mum did. And I'm very lucky I grew up with those 2, great cultures, really. And mum and dad were fantastic. They were great parents, didn't have a lot of money, but, gave me love and supported me all the way through my career. Like what I said, I never would have made it without them, both in athletics and football. They just gave me the freedom and trust to go on and, do the things. And it was just a great time. When I look back now and how I grew up in the 80s and 90s and, the people that I met, I just had the best time of my life. It was just such a great time to grow up in Australia. And we all grown up in the 80s and 90s going, mate, it would have been better in the 60s or 70s. Well, I don't know. But all I know is that, even the clubs and the bars and everything here, and it was easy to get around. There wasn't as many people and the traffic wasn't as bad. We used to hang out in the city and, just drink and just have a great time we did. It was just unbelievable. What can I say? I moved out of high school, from high school, I had all my mates down from Layla Thomastown. A lot of them were Europeans, and there was 30 or 40 of us hanging out. It was just a great time to grow up. And, I was very blessed. I met Ange also as a great teammate and similar cultural backgrounds. And, we became best buddies, I guess, at footy. And I've still got some mates that I've had since, my teenage years. And so I cherish the guys.
Yeah, I could talk all day, I reckon. So from more of a broad footy sense at the moment, there's obviously heaps to talk about the state of the game. Where do you sort of sit with all these, like zones and rule changes that dominates the headlines and agendas week after week? As a player who played the game in what was known as a really attractive era of footy, how do you see where footy has gone to now, and is there any changes you'd make personally to the game at the moment?
Yeah, I'm not sure about changes because I don't really delve too deep into footy anymore. I don't sit there and watch it and read the papers. I don't know half the plays anymore. But the game was at the best state, I reckon, in the 80s and 90s when I grew up. I mean, the plays were iconic. So if I'd have met one of the AFL football greats back then, it would have been like, oh my God, in awe. But now I guess we get so many. You love soccer players. We love basketballers, and we hear all the income they earn. And a lot of kids now are playing soccer more so than footy because visually I don't think footy is as good as what it used to be. Those hard hits and the high-flying marks and that one-on-one battle that we used to go and watch to see who would win the battle on the day. So footy's just not like that anymore. I still think they're underpaid. They're better athletes. It's just a harder game. They're better skilled. Although they miss a lot of goals, I think it's because they're so fatigued. They run so hard. So I admire them. It's not like I don't admire them. The game's harder now than what it was in our day, although maybe not physically, but certainly tough in the sense that when the ball's there, they do definitely go, and the tackles, and they don't get a lot of time and space like we did. But the game in my day, I reckon, was just a lot better visually to watch. And even my oldest boy, Jamie, who hates footy, he watched the 95, it was your mob, Anzac Day, Collingwood and Essendon. It was like packed out. It was sold out. It was over 90-something thousand people there that day in Severio. Rocker kicked 9 goals. And he was watching and going, Dad, if footy was like this nowadays, I'd actually watch the game. And now, unfortunately, because of that, and Carlton's not doing as well also, he has no interest in the game. You know what I mean? He watched them last week going, Dad, why would I follow them?
That speaks volumes.
Yeah, so the game has certainly changed.
Maybe that's what we need to do, is actually ask the kids what they think of the game.
Yeah, maybe.
Instead of the older experts.
As I travel around the country all over Australia doing footy talks and things like that, I see the numbers diminishing in football and the clubs having to merge and some are struggling. And we've got more population now. We've doubled the population, but not as many people, playing this game of football anymore, which is really sad. Even my old club, the football club, are on their knees, you know what I mean? And luckily they've got a good president now to trying to, help them along. But it's going to be a tough journey moving forward. But we love the game. To me, it was like a religion, footy. I just wanted to be a footballer, and I love cricket as well. They were the two sports in Australia, you know what I mean? If you're going to go up, you love those sports. And when my relatives came from Italy to come here and watch, they loved the game of footy as well because it was unbelievable to watch. Yeah. But nowadays, I don't know. I'd love to know what the new migrants think of the game as they go and watch it and just see players all in that one area on the ground. I'm sure they'll think differently to the migrants back in our days because all the Europeans have followed some sort of football team since the 60s and 70s.
Well, as someone who watches it a lot, if I was to go with a new migrant and try to explain the rules to him, someone who's watched them my whole life, I probably couldn't even explain a lot of the free kicks that are being given, those sort of things, which 100%. Is just, if I can't explain it, how are they going to enjoy the game?
Correct. They'll just see players running everywhere. Yeah. Whereas before they would have seen hard bumps and they think we're crazy, right?
Yeah.
These high marks and long kicks and all that stuff, but that's out the game now.
Bit of just on post football. You in 2006, you won Dancing with the Stars.
Yes.
Which was I didn't tune in that year, but it was a good feat.
Just go back on the highlights, please.
Don't worry, we'll be showing it with mainly podcast format. It's all good. And then in 2008, you played Kouta the Greek God in Seven's Gladiators. Yeah. You were referred to as Kouta, a gladiator touched by the gods. Yeah. What was it like to have been touched by the gods? Because there is a bloke down in Preston who reckons he's been touched by the gods as well. I just want to make sure the stories sort of add up. Yeah. No, I'm kidding, obviously. But are those TV appearances, is it because you just try and fresh new things, or do you feel it's a bit of brand marketing sort of towards other business ventures that you've been doing?
I don't know. I guess when you get offered, you look at it and just go yes or no, and the Dancing with the Stars one, I rang Mum and she said, you're doing it. So I decided I'll do it, you know what I mean? I'll have a go. And that was a great experience for me because I ended up winning, and I was the least favourite to win at the start of the show by the odds. So that was a great journey. The Gladiators thing, I'd retired and thought, 3 months of work and being a gladiator, why not give it a go? It got canned after one series because it was the global financial crisis, so it was a very expensive show to produce. So the network may have, I reckon, panicked and maybe panicked a little bit too early. So, I don't know. There's no reason why. I guess if I like it and think, I can do it, I would do it. I mean, I've knocked back a few other things in that also that I could have done. But
Well, you said yes
It's
to
all good
coming here
fun.
today. So.
Yeah, I don't know how.
So
eh?
you're
I've ended up
clearly,
here.
clearly a yes
Thanks
man,
to
which I
Jake.
love,
Yeah, that's
which is
right.
great.
Thanks to Jake. I was driving here going, I'm not sure why I'm driving here. But anyway, I've got a million things to do, but it's all right. I'll hang out with the boys here in Preston.
Thanks, mate. Appreciate it.
Just a couple more, just before we let you go. So just going back to Carlton, obviously Carlton have got Charlie Curnow now, and he's sort of exploded onto the scene. But something that I've heard a lot from fellow Carlton fans, and even in the media, is that he's the next Cooter.
Yeah.
That must be like really gratifying, I guess, for the fan base to still be searching for the next you, first of all. But and then I guess tacking onto that, what similarities do you see between yourself and Charlie? And then where do you think you played your best footy, and where do you think his best footy will end up?
That's great questions. In the past, there's been a few players that have been compared to me also. And I remember in one game they said Rufford had to do a Cooter, had to play in the middle and go in the forward. But Bontempelli was one other player. Nat Fife is another one. Tom Bowell when he was at Carlton. Even Patrick Cripps at stages, they referred to him as, like Cooter almost like, But I dare say, Curnow with his body shape and hairdo, it's almost like a 20-year later, here he is, the clone of Cooter coming out here. He's very talented. We don't want to put pressure on him. But, he's got speed and agility and endurance. I didn't have great endurance. I just had speed and power, really. But if I had his endurance, who knows what I could have done. So he's got the ability to be able to be better if he really wants to. And he's only a young kid. He needs a good team around him. I played my best footy in the midfield. I hated waiting for the ball. I'm not sure about Curnow. There's no doubt he's playing as a forward. It's going to be hard. Like it would be nice if we had the ability to maybe trial him a little bit down back and in the midfield and just to see how he goes. But we just don't have the depth to be able to do that, unfortunately. But hopefully we'll get an opportunity to see whether he can. They played him a little bit in the ruck last week, and I'm not sure why, but
it's fraught with that.
God,
that's just what we need.
No one complained when I played in the ruck, What I mean? Let Cooter in there. Hopefully he breaks his knee when I first started. It didn't matter. So take Justin, I've put Cooter in there, but that was all right, no problem. Hopefully he gets that chance. With me, like I sacrificed too a lot of my game playing in every different position. It would have been nice in hindsight to think, what if I just played centre back all my career or in the midfield? I didn't get into the midfield until 1999. I played, on the wing a lot of the times, whereas, there's games I took 18 marks and had 30-something possessions on a wing. Who knows what I would have done if I was actually in the midfield. But I never had that opportunity because of my versatility. And there was games when there was no one to play full forward, and they're like, Cooter, this week you're playing a full forward. You know what I mean? Yeah. It's not easy for a player to sacrifice your games at certain times, and you don't get no acknowledgement, for it. So people can look back in the career and go, oh, this and that and whatever, but really you have to think that unlike some other players that can just solely play in the midfield and can't play anywhere else, I was able to play in every position, which now I'm sure every team looks for as well. And they look for athletes now, don't they, really as well. So that makes them more versatile.
So it is sort of a blessing and a curse, isn't it, really? Like being able to be versatile.
It is. People don't understand, yes.
And when the runner actually came out and yelled out your name, what were you secretly hoping he would tell you, which position? What did you definitely
I was always the midfield.
Yeah.
Like even the 99 prelim final at three-quarter time, I was hoping that they'd put me in the middle, and they didn't. And at the start of the fourth quarter, about a minute in, the runner came to me and said, Cooter, you're in the middle. I was just like, please, midfield. I just enjoyed being around the ball rather than waiting for it.
Yeah.
I didn't enjoy waiting. It was just let the natural flair of just, being there and running around and playing the game of football was the way that I enjoyed playing.
Final one from us. You've been fantastic with your time today, so we do really thank you for that. But just a chance for you to tell us what you're up to these days. You're wearing the Koutoufides t-shirt there, so by all means, plug to our audience. Tell us what you're up to. What are you doing?
Between you and I, only a couple.
A
couple thousand.
About 8 years ago, I started a business called Herbalife. I was struggling with my health. I was sleeping 11 hours and I struggled to get out of bed, had a lot of health issues. So for the first time, I was really concerned with my life, really. I stopped training for a little period. Anyway, I got introduced to the product and skeptically jumped on it. There's this a stigma about the company for whatever reason, but I've been on it now for over 7 years and absolutely love it. So that was my first foray into the health and nutrition part. I then started Koutoufides Clubs, which I grew to 30 odd. I think there was almost 30 of my branding out there, the names of the communities that we built. But I also started a Koutoufides program online, which has nothing to do with Herbalife. It's just normal whole food eating and exercising from home and a mindset component, which I do out of my fit clubs anyway. We say 20% is about exercise, 80% nutrition, but 100% mindset. So the philosophy stays the same with Koutoufides. So it goes there. People can train from home at the luxury of their own time. They can watch it on the big screen if they want to, do whatever. There's all these meals there for them as well as options. It's not really weight loss meals diet, but we can add that part of it as well. But just healthy eating, and you'll get fitter anyway by doing the exercises and start to feel better. But I've had a lot of great success with the Herbalife product now for over 7 years, and I've got a lot of great leaders in my organisation, and we're helping a lot of clients lose a lot of weight. You know what I mean? And so I really enjoyed it. I just after footy, in a period where I was lost for 3 or 4 years, I found this and just have absolutely loved it. I work from home, hence the reason why I'm here. Yep. I'm flexible. I do my Fit Club, and so we grab communities of people that are really not well or looking for solutions, and we definitely help them. And once we get them down to the best shape of their life, some of them, not all, you can never guarantee, they're just like over the moon, you know what I mean? They feel better, they look younger, and it just changes their life. So I'm in a great space at the moment. I look forward to continue building on this and building it. Like, I've got a team in certain parts of Australia, but I'd love to just build it even more. Like, Australia, so we have an obesity epidemic. I just want to get out there and help as many people as I possibly can and say, you know what, maybe you've tried this, this and that. You know what, let me grab your hand and let's just go one more time, and let's see if I can change your life also, like I've been able to impact a lot of other people too. So that's what I do, boys. It's great. Yeah, I love it. I have no involvement with footy, which is a sad thing because I feel like I've got a lot to offer. But hopefully, as my young boy Lucas comes through the ranks, and he just turned 8 yesterday, that hopefully I can get involved in that sort of way, that he loves the game and that, and then try to help him as much as I possibly can.
So we could have Koutoufides as our
major
sponsor.
How much would that cost me, boys?
We'll talk about it after the cameras. But,
we'll do a deal. We'll do a contra deal. You know what I mean? So cash only.
We do accept cash.
The only form of currency we accept. Kouta, thanks very much for your time this afternoon. It's been an absolute honour, I know, for me, and Ben was wrapped as well. Absolutely. To have you on. All being an Essendon supporter, but thank you very much for your time. Thanks for sharing your story. Good luck with what the future holds for your businesses, and hopefully we can get you back into footy at some stage. We can see Carlton win a few more flags.
That'd be nice. Boys, thanks very much. Good luck to you boys too, and thanks for the opportunity to be able to speak. They were great questions, so well done.
Cheers. Thank you very much.
Right now.